Welcome. This is Rabbit Holes with Aaron. I am Aaron. I do beekeeping. I'm pretty much a nomad, also a retired Marine of 20 years. And with me today, I have a good friend and brother. His name is Sam. We did a lot of time in the Marine Corps together. We went to a lot of duty stations. It seems like I followed him all over the Marine Corps after we met. We were instructors together and a host of other things. And now we're still friends. And I'm so honored to have him on the show. Is there anything I missed, Sam?
No, I don't think you missed anything. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here with you, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we talked for a minute about what we want to explore. And he hit me with this question. And I don't even know what I think about it. But we're going to start with it because that's just how exciting it is around here. So he asked me, what is your biggest fear? Well, and if you ask me that question, you got to know the answer, right? So, what is your biggest fear? I mean, we'll both think about it. I don't know. I think actually, in all honesty, throughout my entire life, and even still, one of my biggest fears is boredom. Like not having anything to do, or not wanting to do anything. You know, it's something I've explored a lot and thought about a lot. It's something I've learned to work around, and like I've got a calendar and I put things on it, things to do. Also, I create a checklist of things I need to get done. I guess it's boredom coupled with meaninglessness, not doing things that are meaningful and substantial. Like the boredom of, like, usually my boredom in this situation, and to answer this question, is it hits me well because I say no to a lot of things that I need to do, right? I'm like, I need to do these 15 things. I need to fire some pottery. I need to prepare for another pottery class. I need to go inspect the bees and make sure they have enough space. I need to get another podcasting episode. And I just look at the list and I say, I don't want to do that. And then I sit in a chair bored and I'm like, this is miserable. Let me go revisit that list and knock something off of there. And then that kind of seems to take away my boredom. But I like this topic of fear, such a bigger topic that I've kind of been exploring in my life. But back to you. What do you think? What is your biggest fear?
I was telling you earlier, the question really came in from a guy that I've been watching a lot of videos on. His name is Jamie Winship, and he was basically introducing the idea about how you really get to know somebody. You know, we have the surface level
Mm,
conversations with people all the time. Hey, how you doing? Oh, doing great. You know, those types of things. He said if you really want to get to know somebody, ask them what their biggest fear is. And I thought,
mm,
man, that's a deep question, and I can understand why. Um, you know, that could really spark some conversation, and it could really get vulnerable really quick if people are honest, right? So those are some deep conversations. I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. Not only that, but how many times do people actually ask you that question? You don't really get that question. I don't know that I've had anybody
right.
ever ask me that before. I'm thinking, wow, that's a unique question. I'm 52 now, so that's we were talking about you don't have very many firsts anymore earlier.
Yeah.
We were discussing. So my biggest fear, since I got a little bit of head start on it, because I've been pondering it for a little bit,
Yeah.
is I just sprung it on you, but mine actually has to do with God,
Mm,
where I am currently in my life, and the testimony that I have of my understanding of God and what I believe according to the Bible and Jesus, who's my Lord and Savior, how I've come to understand what being a disciple is, not just a someone who calls themselves a Christian, and really my life is defined by who I am, what my profession is. You know, I'm a father, I'm a husband, all that stuff. I think my biggest fear at this moment in my life it relates to the Lord, specifically since He's gotten my attention, and I've actually come across that transition of am I really following Him?
mm,
Do I have a good, close relationship with Him? It centers around this hearing God concept and just doing what it is that He wants me to do, talking with Him, hearing Him clearly, and just ensuring that I am doing what He wants me to do. So as far as the fear goes, I guess the fear backside of that would be, am I hearing him clearly?
Right.
And if I'm not hearing him clearly, am I not understanding what it is that he wants me to do and
Sure.
that
Yeah.
type of stuff? So, none of us want to get to that place where we're standing before him and then have to answer for what we did or didn't understand, what we did or didn't believe, what we did or didn't
Right.
do. I know salvation is not all about do, but I think that's right now where I'm at
Yeah.
in my life.
Well, I feel good, and I feel good about your fear because I feel like I already know it. So I already, to me, based on what you're sharing, like I already know you at a certain level that's a little bit deeper than we might know other people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And did you, I mean, I don't know if you knew my fear of boredom. I mean, I had never shared that before, really, but do you feel like it worked and you know me a little bit better? What do you think?
I was actually shocked to hear that you had a fear, an actual fear, because you think about fears, those have some weight to them, right? They have to be managed, of course. But to hear that you had a fear of boredom, or I get the meaninglessness, I wrote that down. I get that piece. That makes sense to me. But the boredom piece kind of was like, one, I've never known you to be not doing something, not doing a
That's
lot of
true.
things actually. But I guess
Yeah,
it does make sense then if I can look behind the scenes and go, well, this is why he's doing so many things. Is because he
right.
can't just sit still and do nothing. It's part of how God wired you, I believe. It's you recognizing time, I think, a good use of your time, because none of us are getting any younger. But no,
Yeah,
I think it does help me to understand you a little bit better. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and on your point of, and I love talking about fear. Fear is usually not a really good thing, but really it's kind of in my mind it's a kind of message that we can receive from inside. It's a kind of voice we can hear that pushes us usually into all the wrong places, right? But I guess I'm kind of in recovery of that fear. Like I'm learning like to sit and rest at times and to kind of balance out like the rest with the work. And so yeah, behind the scenes, it's like, well, I don't just want to be left at home sitting there all day. And we can find out those are different kind of personality types as well. Like some people are homebodies and they can sit here all day long at home and read a book and watch some TV and fix a couple meals and life is good. But I find I'm almost driven to go out and do stuff in the world with people, and but yeah, fear is so interesting because the really it marks like a chapter change in my life of sitting down with the fear, like catching it because it's so sneaky. Like we're so motivated by it. It's got us rushing here to and fro and moving back and forth and doing a million things. And if you can grab it and stop it for a second and like make it sit down with you and like, hey, why why are you driving me nuts? Why are you driving me all over the place? What is the reason? Like what is the reason I'm running away from you? What is the message you have? And then like I'm finding a lot of meaning in rest now and a lot of including other people in my rest and including relationships in the rest and in the not doing anything, in the pauses. So, yeah, well, it has driven me a lot. And there's a lot of good things that it's driven me to. For instance, let's look at a few of them. Like I joined the Marine Corps because I was afraid of having the same life as my parents. I didn't want to go to college and I didn't want to stay at home because I see what happens to people that are like working at the grocery store now and they're like 20 and I was working there at 16 and I wanted something greater for my life. I wanted more meaning, and that's what drove me to join the Marine Corps. And it wasn't a bad thing. They fed me 3 times a day, and actually paid me and all this stuff. And they were like, "We'll make you a man," and I'm like, "Oh, I like the sound of that," and so it was my fear of being bored and my fear of being meaningless that drove me into that. What turns out was a good decision 30 years ago. right? But yeah, so it's interesting. Fear is interesting. Running at breakneck pace, from things. And they have found, and marketing is all about selling to our fears, selling to, if we're going to die, it's a life or death struggle. Well, really, if I die, good things happen. If I stay alive, good things happen. You know, I don't understand the fear of death anymore. There's so many things I'm not afraid of, but so I can recognize, and I'm sure the same's for you, so you can see people completely motivated by fear. Is that, would you say that's accurate for your perspective?
I don't think I've honestly recognized a lot of fears in other people. It
Okay.
wasn't until this subject had come up through him, and basically what he had said was that when you're talking to people, it's all based on identity, right? So in someone's identity, normally there is fear that is fueling their identity, and most of the time, the fear portion of it is fueling a false identity. So specifically, when you're talking about identity, who are you really? Not who you portray yourself to be, but who are you really? And even, do you even know the difference, right? So he was talking about it in that sense. Of course, in the Christian sense, it's you were made by God, and He made you who you are before you knew who you are. For a good part of your life, you're figuring out or learning who you are. This type of question actually comes up and sneaks up on you and says, what part of you, of who you think you are, is motivated by a false identity? And you've
Hmm.
just been playing this part so long. It's called the imposter syndrome. You probably heard that before. You've been playing this part so long, you're convinced that this is who you are, but it's actually not. So it's kind of an introspective type of thing, but turning that around and talking to someone else, I don't know that I have been able to pinpoint or even realize that fear could be a part of that. It wasn't until later on in my life that I even heard of this imposter syndrome and even considered the question. And then I started realizing, okay, well, there is something to this. I learned a little bit about myself. I don't think I've transitioned that to other people yet to be able to say,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, this normally it's what is your story, right? Who are you is really what we're asking people when we're first getting to know them. And I would say that most of the relationships we have are only so deep. There aren't very many people that we get into those types of deeper conversations with. So to see how fear works on other people, I mean, you can see examples of it. Some people are fear, they're afraid of failure. I think I could identify with one of those. And I don't know that I've
Sure.
gotten to the bottom of that one yet, but
Okay.
other people are also, afraid of being vulnerable is another one I think a lot of people would identify with. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got a couple I think of fear of rejection
Very good.
and
Yeah.
fear of embarrassment. There's a really common one these days, fear of missing out. It drives a lot of the economy. Like, hey, they got a new car. I need a new car, and it's kind of this fear of missing out on something. And actually, that's most of, as it turns out, what marketing to humans is, because we're more swayed by missing an opportunity than we are by making a good choice and opening up a new opportunity. And so we're more survival safety minded at the base of who we are as humans, they find. And so if they can show you something on TV and you're like, wow, I didn't even know you could get that device, vehicle, I don't know, paper towel. I mean, everything, right? Then you look at it and you're like, and they show you a happy person driving it, you're like, man, I want to be happy like them. I I didn't even know I could be that happy. Maybe I need that car. And so it's all like a subconscious thing. And so they're really marketing mostly to our subconscious, but to our fears, to some extent. But I know people that struggle with like a fear of embarrassment. And so they're really careful in everything they wear and in every word they say and how they talk about someone so that it doesn't come back to embarrass them. And, and a lot of these are really close to kind of ideal behavior, right? Like, caring about other people. Like I care about other people. But really, it's kind of, at least fear of embarrassment is close to that, but it like crosses the line into mostly caring about myself. And so what that limits you, how does that limit you? It limits, just to take this down this rabbit hole of this particular fear of embarrassment. Like, well, I don't want to tell them the truth about what they're going through, or maybe a serious change they need to make, because that could come back to embarrass me. And so I'm kind of be careful about, well, I know exactly what they need to do, perhaps. I mean, if a person can ever know that for someone else, but maybe I know them really well. And I'm just like, yeah, you need to get an oil change on your car. It doesn't have to be big world breaking things, but it's like, hey, by the way, yeah, every 5,000 miles or so, you change the oil in your car and it lasts for you for a long time. A lot of people don't know that, right? And so yeah, it's not being afraid of what they'll think or what they'll say or what they'll do or whether they'll embarrass me or not. It's kind of like this being comfortable with being disagreed with and being comfortable with, being disliked even. Like, and I think, we can look back at the life of Jesus and what he said too. He didn't care if they liked him or not. He wasn't trying to win any awards for popularity. You know, he told them straight out maybe what would set them free and what would help them out. And they didn't like it. As a matter of fact, they usually got upset and tried to kill him in some way. So anyway, yeah. But yeah, that's a fully explored rabbit hole for you.
Yeah, I think really I like how you brought up survival though, because
Hmm.
there's a couple of things that are in that. I think balance is another thing that came up. You know, we can have these things, and one of the lessons that I had learned was not every problem needs to be fixed. A lot of them just need to be managed. But the survival versus purpose, a lot of people are just getting along, and they're creating their to-do lists and they're knocking their to-do list off. But I found in my own life there's a very few times that I can look at that there was this intentional goal set where there's a purpose and you're working towards that purpose. Those are so there's a difference between surviving, right, and a purpose that you have set uh, to accomplish. Also, I think the piece that you've brought up was this concept also by that guy that I was telling you about, which is truth telling, right? A lot of people are modifying truth.
Right.
They're filtering it as they have their conversations, as they either talk to people or going about their survival mode, right? They're modifying it so that you get the best unfiltered version. I think you were telling me a second ago about that. But yeah, that's all really good. I'm also taking
Yeah,
notes because conversations like these I actually learn from as well.
yeah, who doesn't? I mean, I do. Every single podcast, I'm learning stuff from other people. But I
Yeah.
like the way I've heard it phrased lately to take it back. I think you were talking about balance and survival was people are, they say nice guys finish last, for instance. But being nice is I'm going to not say the truth right now that you need to hear for your temporary comfort. I'm going to honor your comfort and I'm not going to tell you the truth that might rattle it, but also might set you free. And so it's nice short term is like limiting the amount of truth I tell other people of what I see, what I hear. I mean, we're talking, I mean, for instance, I'm trained as a counselor and I'm trained to identify problems, and also ways that a person can set themselves free emotionally, mentally, physically, psychologically. And so I can see like the road they're on as I get to know them better. I mean, not at first glance, like, okay, there's a narcissist over there, no. It's like as you develop this friendship and this relationship with people, you can, if they ask you, you can say, yeah, I think, for example, let me give you another example, just to spell it out in real life with somebody's real story. It's like a guy talks to me and says, I just need more willpower. And I'm like, that's great. That's great. That's good to know what you need, right? It's like knowing that my starter's broken on my car and that's why it's not working. I can watch a video, I can buy a starter, I can fix it if I know what's broken. So I'm like, oh, you got a problem with willpower? Yeah, just probably go get a book on willpower, read about it, watch some YouTube videos on willpower, learn all about it, then you can fix it. Boom, back on the road on your journey, you know. And I am noticing what they're saying. I'm not interjecting what I'm saying into them. Oh, you just need to do this and this and this. Well, and that takes me back to our history where I've tried to help you so many times, help in parentheses of what I thought your next step was, but you had to find your own path. But this is different where they say what they need, and I just notice it and reflect it back to them, and they're like, wow, that doesn't sound impossible at all. Let me look on Amazon and get another book, for to read about it, of course, if they read it or not. But that's the kind of truth I'm talking about. That being nice and being a nice guy is almost like being a yes man. Okay, so it's like listening to one of our young Marines, and we're gunnery sergeant, master sergeant. They're like, yeah, I'm just going to go spend $500 on alcohol and stay in my barracks room and drink all weekend. You are a Marine, and that I can see why you'd want to do that, but what other things could you do this weekend? Maybe you need to think of let's do a risk assessment. Let's think about some other options, and maybe that's not maybe that's how you end up in the evening. Maybe you have a drink or two, but like drinking all day long, it sounds miserable, and that's telling truth to them from our experience because we may have done that once or twice. It's like I think it's just going to lead you to a miserable place, if not the blotter, if not the jail. What do you think? Looks like you can relate.
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree with you. I'm noticing probably in my life I've done that as well. I've erred more on the nice side. And I think it's probably an overcorrection for those people who really don't have any compassion. They're all too willing to dominate the conversation. They're all too willing to tell you what your problem is, and not only what your problem is, but how you're supposed to fix your problem, whether you agree with it or not. And then if you don't agree with them, then there's an issue. So I think some people take that kind of out of balance from my
Of
experience,
course.
and then
Yeah.
they're like, well, truth means that I should tell you whatever I think I should tell you, and if you can't handle the truth,
Uh,
you like that plug, right? You can't handle the truth. Then that's your problem. You just have coping mechanisms that aren't in place, and that's not my fault. I don't necessarily need to care about your feelings. I need to tell you what I need to tell you because this is how I see it. So I think that's what I do is I overcorrect from that mindset to no, I do care. I do care how what I say hits you. It's the old adage that if you borrow something, you want to give it back to them in better condition than you borrowed it. By the same token, if I'm talking to you and I leave you in a worse position than you were when we first started talking, then I'm probably not doing too well, at being a somebody to talk to or help. So anyway,
yeah. Well, to bring it full circle and to be vulnerable, like when you were talking about that, I was like, oh yeah, I remember I was that person, 20 years ago or whenever we were talking and talking you through stuff, and I had been through stuff, and I'm like, you need to do this, Sam, and you need to do this. And you did what you felt was right in your conscience at that point in your growth, and I'm okay with that, except for on my side, I'm kind of not happy. But I guess I've learned my lesson. I've come full circle now. So where I don't tell people what to do anymore. I don't say, oh yeah, here's the simple solution to your whole lifestyle problem. Well, here you go. Let me boil it down and give you three easy steps, right? Divorce.
right.
There you go. Easy. There you go. Easy. Just go, fill out some paperwork and turn it in, and you're divorced. Boom. Problem solved, right? Those are the kind of solutions I used to give out. And, you know, while I'm not proud of them, it led me to where I am now, to where I don't give out solutions. I don't give out advice, where I listen to the person and just allow them to hold up a mirror and see themselves. And they're like, wow, that sounds really crazy. I can't believe I just said that. Or, wow, maybe that's the next step I need to take. I didn't know that I knew that, whatever path it wants to take. But yeah, we got history. I like having history with my guest on a podcast. And so we can go back there and I can think about it. and in some small way reconcile it and say, you know what, Sam, I was wrong. You know,
What? You were wrong?
I was wrong. Boom. But that brings me back since we're just jumping through rabbit holes, and I'm so glad you're doing the rabbit hole thing so wonderfully. Um, but like I want to take it back to the rabbit hole of like friendship, the rabbit hole we didn't go down really, and I think a lot of this ties into friendship. Like I'm looking at my list, being vulnerable. Um, you know, what's your biggest fear? I mean, getting to know someone better is a part of friendship. Being vulnerable is a really important part, and a kind of a counterintuitive part of friendship. In some of my previous podcasts, another one I talked about was, well, that the other person, the guest brought up was shared vision is a big part of friendship, right? Like we're trying, whether it's the kingdom mindset as far as in Christianity, or you just have the same goal in life. Maybe it's a goal of growth, and mental health, and balance, and being a good friend. What do you think? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it actually goes really well because there was one more piece to that last rabbit hole that pulls into this one, and that's
Okay.
one of the best advices that I've ever had somebody give me was just here recently, going through one of the worst times in my life possibly. And it's one of those
Okay.
things you don't really share with people. But as I'm sharing with these guys, they're Christian brothers, and you go to them and you're having a very serious conversation about what you're going through, listening to you. They give you the sounding board that you can get some of these thoughts out of your head, out of your mouth, and hear really how they sound. I had two brothers that actually, one after the other, it wasn't at the same time, but they looked at me in my face, going with just a really hard time I was going through, and they said, that's really tough, and I don't know that I have any advice for you, but know this, that it's not gonna um, it's not gonna end poorly. It's not going to be the end of the world, and I will walk through you with it. As you walk through it, I will be with you as you go through it,
Hmm.
and I'll pray for you. And I thought, man, on the initial side, I was thinking, man, the reason I'm talking to you because I need some answers. I mean, that's what we do as
Right.
people, right? We're like,
Okay.
you're talking about going and buy another book on willpower. We need to Google this real quick and get the steps. But it really just struck me at their wisdom because these are guys that have been pastors and had ministries, for a long time. And they really
Hmm.
looked at me and said, "Man, that's really tough. I don't have any advice for you on that. That is really just a you and God thing that you're really going to have to hear from the Lord. But I encourage you to continue. Of course, keep the faith. Don't let it, shake that. We have a foundation. But for both of those men, to give me that advice was really a lesson to me in my life of, you know what, I don't always have to have the answer. I can just
Hmm.
be with the person and help them as I can. But really, the best way I think I can help them is probably just to be there and to let those conversations flow out. So you were talking about, uh, friendship and having the same goal. I'll kind of take it one step further. Is mine and your goals might not even be shared, but because you're important to me and our friendship is important to me, your goals are important to me, right? And vice
Yeah.
versa, right? You want the best for me, and you can hear a lot differently than I can because I've got the whole echo chamber thing going on in my head, and thoughts bouncing. But when they're communicated, what you hear and what you give back, that filter and that assistance, we're all wired to need one another. We're all
Yeah.
wired to be, I'm good. I don't need anybody. So I think those are really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how much we need each other as humans, and not just you and me. Although our friendship is, I love it. But yeah, humans in general, and the dynamics of bringing humans together in a combined goal. Like for the longest time, and a little bit still, like I was down on mega churches. Like my gosh, everything's an advertisement on the screen and asking for my generosity and the perfect performance of the praise and worship team or the orchestra, or depending on how big the church is, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all they want is money. But then I realized, well, and it didn't completely sway me back. I'm not going to a mega church or anything, but I realized there is a lot of work to bringing a lot of people together, bringing them into the same rhythm in the song, perhaps, or music, having them sing together, having them think about the same things. And there is going to be, I mean, it's well documented in scriptures that you bring people together, and it's better than being by yourself in every way. And science is now finding out that, like, if you have one brain, it can come up with a certain amount of solutions. And you're more experienced and more intelligence, you get more solutions. But it's quickly dwarfed by two brains. You bring two brains together, i.e., two people. We're not talking about brain surgery here. You bring two people together, and you get exponentially more solutions. You don't just get twice as many. You get exponentially more solutions than you do with one person. And then you multiply that. And you can imagine how having 10,000 people sitting there singing the same song to the same rhythm aligns you, together. And so I see the miracle of how it was designed, right? And what Jesus had in mind, what he mirrored and modeled was bringing people together, like hanging out. And we're supposed to be doing it all the time, right? Not just on Sunday, but but hey, it's not too far off. It's not so far off that they're, sacrificing babies on an altar or anything like that. We're in the realm of we're trying to do good things and trying to change the world for the better and trying to help people. So I had to kind of stop throwing shade upon every church that does it wrong or what I thought did it wrong and think about what they're doing right. I guess that's the battle of gratefulness versus complaining, right? Which, whew, that's vulnerable. I'm like showing you moment by moment where my complaining and gratefulness are kind of overlapping and separating. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I just actually we were having a prayer call the other night, and I got to share this with the group that I was with, that this life that I have begin to walk with Jesus and learning how to hear him and really seeing him work in an experiential way. You know my testimony, but some of the people here may not be in the church for 30 years, and I was a believer, but it was head knowledge. It wasn't necessarily a heart knowledge, and it definitely wasn't relationship or experiencing him or even pursuing really him for lack of a better term. But I was sharing with them how I got into this place where as I'm doing this, I get into just a really difficult place in faith. Not faith in him. Does he exist? Does he not exist? Do I have the right? Do I have the truth or not? But really in the experiencing him and doing it in a way that is a little bit difficult. It creates some anxiety or fear if you're not careful. And so one day I was just here recently, about a week ago, in my quiet time in the morning, I'm just in this place of fear and crying out to the Lord type of thing. And as I start to and my a little bit more about my testimony as well, but there's this hearing God clearly enough type of thing that I pursue.
Yeah,
And I swear he asked me, man, he said, "What are you wanting to say to me?" And I kind of stopped and I wrote it down and I was like, well, that's an interesting question. It was really touching on the point of, you come to God if you're praying every day or, even in the morning or the evening or whenever you're praying, if you're coming to him for that specific, conversation or that time to spending time with him, you might develop a certain rhythm, right? So like me, I
right.
come and I'm immediately thank you for this day. Thank you for the rest that I received because I know a lot of people that don't get the rest that I do. So, but those two things come natural. But as you're going through the natural, this question gets popped up, and I'm surprised by it of what is it that you want to say to me? It's not those rote things that you're coming to me with as just
You're
every
right.
day telling me thank you for this and thank you for that and being thankful. But what is it that you're wanting to say? And I think it really touched me that it was like him leaning in and saying, "Okay, let's put this stuff aside for a second. What's on your heart?" And I was like surprised by it. And then I went through like, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 different questions that I wrote down one after another after another after another. And it just showed me, number one, that I do hear from him. Number two, that he cares, right? And he was asking me those types of questions like he asked Job to a certain degree, but these were more like, what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about me? What is it that you're believing that's not really true? And where did you hear that from? And what is the impact on it in your life now? That those types of things. But
Wow.
then right after that, it was I quickly went from this fear-based, the things that I'm seeing, the indicators, all the dash lights that are lit up and blinking and some
Yeah.
alarms, all of that stuff faded away. And he went so far as to say, haven't I provided for you for the last 2 years when you didn't have a job? Have you lacked for anything? Do you trust me? Do you really believe that I will provide for you? These types of things came out, and it was amazing to me how quickly it shifted from literally, oh my God, how am I going to make it through this? To, wow, you really do have me. And it's not something that the world can really explain. Even when you tell people those types of testimonies, they're like, no way, that didn't happen. Like people
Right.
didn't give you thousands of dollars out of nowhere just because the Lord led them to do that. When you happen to need that, type of thing. No, those are the experiential times with God where you're like, I can't unexperience this. I can't unknow him in this manner, which is really a deeper place than I was for those 30 years, you know,
Sure.
thinking I was doing religion to the best of the ability of what people had taught me, but I really didn't have that relationship that a lot of people that I heard them talk about. So it's just a good analogy or example of that shift, what you're talking about between the gratefulness and the complaining, and how quickly he's able to right that ship. It was good. I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that personally. Yeah. I've been waiting for that moment for you for a long time. So I'm happy to hear that he spoke to you in that way. Yeah, he cuts right through it, doesn't he? He's like, "Is there anything you want to talk to me?" And like, I just talked to you for like 3 hours. He's like, "No, no, he he's teaching me about listening. He is the expert on listening. Like he barely ever talks, so when he does, it changes everything, And so, but he listens to us. We're so wrong-headed for so long, and eventually he's like, I love it. I love it. That's so much of what I've experienced his nature to be is like, yeah, I heard all the things you asked me. I want to know what you really want to talk about. It's like you and me talking, like we're talking about our biggest fear. It's like, hey, thanks for bringing it. Thanks for bringing a real question. Thanks for bringing a real topic. Thanks for being vulnerable. And that's the kind of conversation he wants to have with us. And that's how he wants to come to him. I completely agree. And yeah, awesome.
Yeah. I think that what I'm learning is I keep getting hit with my expectation is off. My expectation that just like when I'm talking to you, when I stop talking and the silence hits, I'm expecting that you're going to fill in some of the gaps and respond to. And I've had that expectation for a long time, and I think that has been my frustration, honestly, is that so many times I have went and had that conversation that I felt was one-sided at the time, but I think I'm realizing that expectation has lot more to do with me than it does with him. Is you read through the
Yeah,
Bible and we can get the condensed version of, the Lord said this in this detail to this person, and he responded, and then the guy responded, and then God responded, and then the guy responded, and you're like, wow, I want to have those types of conversations. We don't really get the full sense of, yeah, that conversation happened with a specific person for a specific purpose, right? And it also happened, like the one instance, 400 years there was silence. And you're thinking, oh, wow, yeah, we are talking about the all powerful, all present, all knowing creator of the universe.
right.
He's more than capable of handling his side of the conversation. But there's also you know what, I may not respond to you. And it's your continuing, your endurance, perseverance, your faith that keeps you coming. That's really what I'm trying to draw out of you. That you come to me and say, I'm not letting go. I'm not quitting. My faith is not going anywhere. we're gonna wrestle, and I'm not gonna go anywhere until you bless me, until I hear from you.
Right.
You know, those types of conversations. So I think that's
Yeah.
the expectation piece is what's just been continuously being brought up, that I
Mm.
can modify my expectations, and he doesn't have to meet mine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. It's
Yeah. Yeah. So many times we limit ourselves, or we in our mind we think we limit what God can do. No, 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 no. No, that's sorry. The scriptures are very clear. You cannot do this miracle over here or whatever. You know, he's so much more vast and mysterious than we realize a lot of times. And he likes to do miracles in different ways every time. And when you can see every single possibility, and you're like, why do I want to do the same thing twice? I don't want to do the same thing twice. I think I want to do it this way over here this time, right? And he wants to get us to listen to that point of listening and gratefulness. I I think that's my theory. But I like what you said, when we think about, I just have to walk through this day, you know, and I think that's a crippling fear for so many. Okay, so I'm fine for today, but what am I doing for food tomorrow, right? What am I doing for a place to live in 3 years? That's where the question. Well, I better work extra hard, and I better trade in all my free time for money, and so that I can have enough money so that I can take care of myself in 3 years. And God's like, I give you enough for this day and this day only. But tomorrow's another day, and I'll give you enough for that day too. And like every day, all of a sudden, I don't have to plan out the rest of my life. I just have to walk out today, and keep breathing and keep taking steps and keep trying things and whatever. So yeah, I like that. So many good things here. And I think we've hit all the rabbit holes that I've written down, but I had another idea, but I'll let you see if there's anything else you wanted to discuss. Say browns or alibis, as we used to say.
Yeah, I think the other piece that I'm learning too is the contentment. Right.
Mm,
The things may not look necessarily like I want them to. Maybe in pain, for whatever reason, but being able to be content even in those areas is a new thing that I'm learning currently. Is being
mm,
content in those difficult times. Another prayer group, like a men's breakfast type thing, happened the other day, and the verse that came up talking about how His grace was sufficient, and how being content in those very difficult times is actually, it's almost like a gift of His grace being sufficient in that time, and the contentment that you're able to really rest in even the most difficult time is a advanced level thing, I think, that I've been learning.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't think I've learned that up until this point, to be even aware of, and actually be able to walk out you know
yeah.
so I think that's another thing I'm learning.
It's a lost art. You look around, nobody's ever content. But I've thought about a lot about contentment and done a lot of study on it. And it seems to come down, for me, it seems to come down to I can be content in anything. Well, even the worst situation. Well, how? Because I know that God cares about me and I have a relationship with Him, and nobody can take that away, and nobody can convince me otherwise. You can't scare me away from Him anymore. Anyway, you can tell me you're going to take away all my stuff. You can tell me you're going to kill me. You can tell me you're going to throw me in jail and be like, I can make that work. Thanks. you know, because you can't take that away. You can't take that relationship with Him and also that relationship with myself. You can't take those away. And if you do, I'm in a better place. Boom.
Yeah, I
So
hear a lot of people talk about how even being a believer, they don't understand how people who don't have that, how they're able to cope with a lot of the things that they need to cope with, because they don't have that foundation, they don't have that assurance.
mm,
People who are not believers may explain it as, oh, well, you Christians, you guys need that Jesus crutch thing because y'all are weak. I've heard people say that before in arguments or whatever. It's really an attack, but also having been in that awareness, that's just an assurance and an ability to cope because of who He is. Not that we have to have Him, we get to have Him. I mean, it really boils down sometimes to that level of, okay, I have a lot of things shifting right now, and as they shift, I need something steady, and that's why the foundation, the unshakable piece that Scripture talks about is so important because when you get down to that level, you do have something. Because if you don't, then you start making decisions based off of situations, and there's I think Scripture talks about it being tossed to and fro, type of thing, and uncertain
Oh yeah,
certainty or
yeah, James, double-minded man, unsure in all his ways or whatever, unstable.
unstable. Yeah, yeah. So what else did you have on your list?
I don't have anything else, but I had this idea of talking, maybe sharing a story from our Marine Corps days. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't. I'm just throwing
So
this at
many,
you, but
so many to pick from.
I know. I was reflecting back in my mind while we were talking on our time together as instructors, and I remember, just to talk about. I mean, it's such a different world for most people, right? And even maybe not for veterans or Marines, but for civilians, we had our little office and we were all instructors. We had each had a computer and a desk, and we had a pull-up bar in there so we could continue to work on our pull-ups. We had the Recon Ron pull-up program. Do you remember? Were you a master or senior instructor?
A master. I ended up
Okay.
getting master instructor at the time. Yeah. Which
Okay.
was interesting. You think of those identities at the time, and now we can look back. Better than a decade ago, we were living this other life with this other identity, and expectations and responsibilities on us that it seems like a whole almost like a dream. Looking back at that time. Not that we're a bunch of old guys sitting around talking about the old days or anything, but
Of course not.
it is interesting to see the difference of back then and now. I remember specifically about you. I think one of the coolest things I can remember about you is that being electronics maintenance specifically, was our field. And one of the coolest times I can remember about you was looking up to you as you were in El Maco at the time. To me, that level of technical proficiency, we all learn that type of stuff in school, but as you get out of it, you lose some of that stuff. But I always thought it was so cool. I looked up to you when you were there, knowing that you were in the throes, in the thick of that technical proficiency of not only the electronics and the depths of those, but also the leading Marines doing that at that time.
Yeah.
I just thought it was really cool. I looked up to you because it's
Hmm.
a place that I had never served was that higher level of technical proficiency in that type of unit, which was really neat to me to see you in that place.
Well, I'm not going to take any glory away from it, but I appreciate that you looked up to me in that time. It was pretty amazing. I have a funny story to share since you mentioned El Maco. Like, I was a gunnery sergeant. I had, staff sergeants, E6s, and sergeants and corporals, and then the lance corporals and corporals were somewhat fixing things, fixing radios and electronics and stuff. I mean, they didn't even have soldering irons anymore. They just hooked it up to a machine with plugs and like swap modules. They did that. But one time, just all the staff NCOs and all the NCOs were out of the office or out of the shop for some event or something, and I was the only one. And there was another lance corporal, and he was working on a Singar's radio system, Trick 119. I think it was a Foxtrot, so it was a small radio. Um, and he was like, Gunnery Sergeant, I can't fix it. And so what I did, maybe you'll love this. You'll probably love this. I went over to him and I was like, okay, you got hooked up. Looks like you got it hooked up to the machine correctly. And I was like, let me tell you a story about when I was a Lance Corporal and I fixed radios. And that's all I didn't help him at all. I just told him the story of how radio repair was when I was a Lance Corporal. And he was like, okay, so what should I do next? I was like, have you checked inputs, outputs, and DST bias? And he was like, it looked like I had a third eye growing. He just stared at me like I had a third eye growing out of my forehead. And I was like, okay, um, you know, let me take a look at it. And I came over and looked at it, and like it looked fine. There was no water in it, right? It was opened up. There was modules, and I was like, no, I feel really good about the fact that you can fix this. But if you need me to, I can tell you another story. And he was like, no, that's okay, Gunnery Sergeant. Just like that. Oh my gosh, my heart was just so happy in that moment. I'd come full circle. Instead of yelling and calling him cuss words and, the way I was raised up in the Marine Corps in the Grump Battalion I was a part of when I was first a radio repair guy, I was like, I had my coffee, squarely in the middle of my chest, and assumed the position of a gunnery sergeant and just told him a story about it, about fixing radios. And maybe if he really did listen good and really did like mine it for the jewels, then he might find something that would fix the radio. But I didn't make it easy. But anyway, what do you think about that story?
That is very, very interesting. Yeah. So I guess you can't tell me if he fixed the radio or not.
I imagine he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he probably did. Yeah, he fixed the radio.
Regardless, it made it to the end of the process, and part of the process was having Gunny over there for him to get a good story and a good break.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so much wisdom to that, right? I mean, and I'm not saying I had thought about this whole plan. I was just having fun in the moment. But now looking back at it, I was like, I mean, I'm really building his dependence, his independence, his dependence on himself. And did you get the TM on it? He was like, no, I didn't get the TM. Well, go get the TM and take a look at the TM. It'll help you figure out
Yeah,
what to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
So I'm like redirecting him to the things that he's going to need when I'm not there. So
Absolutely.
which which is what was pushed. It was pushed into me though with a lot of holding the big RT out in front of me. Like if I messed up on an arrow in 1.7, I held the RT out in front of me, the big one, the RT 246, the one with the push
Yeah,
buttons.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was like 50 pounds or something. I was holding it out in front of me, 18-year-old Lance Corporal Evans. And oh yeah, I remembered I told Joe about this the other day. Like my first billet in my tech shop was I was the NCOIC OJD. I was a Julian Day calendar NCO. Like that was my only job besides fixing radios to show up and change the date on the Julian Day calendar. So it
Levels of
wasn't
responsibility.
everybody laughed at me when they gave it to me. Of course, it was all corporals. It was the biggest joke ever. Like, yes, you are now in charge of something, Lance Corporal Evans. We're going to put you in charge of, and it was, they gave me the acronym first, the NCOIC OJD, and I was like, ooh, that does sound good. What is that? Like, you're just going to flip this number every day and make sure it's up to date. I'm like, well, that's
If you think about
anticlimactic.
it, see, if you think about it, you are actually put in charge of the date. That's pretty big.
If I don't change the date, then it doesn't change on any of the paperwork that we're filling
What?
out, right?
That's pretty. I'm glad you were able to make it through that.
You
And
know,
look at you now.
looking back with gratefulness, I realized how big of a job that really is. But then I was just kind of nonplussed is a good word for it, ambivalent, like, no thanks. Like, yeah, it's like a promotion ceremony. Here you go. They printed off a letter and there was a binder for it. Here you go. And all it said on the page was change the Julian date every day. It
Well,
probably
I
had a
mean,
Julian date calendar in there.
you could have been one of the other services and got some kind of award for that.
I a ribbon or a medal or something, perhaps. Heroic service. Maybe a rifle badge or something.
Yeah, yeah.
A patch I could put on my. Anyway, I've shots fired at the other services. But okay, now I have a lot of veterans on here. But when you get a couple of Marines, you already outnumber all the other services. So, sorry. Bad
Yeah.
publicity is still publicity. But anyway, well, we're wrapping up now, and we're just at our last probably minute. Any last words of wisdom for this episode? Otherwise, I'll wrap it up.
No, I think we covered quite a gambit of topics, and there's some significance in depth on there as well. So no, I just really appreciate the opportunity to be on my first podcast, and I appreciate that.
Well, you can
It was
probably be
fun.
on others. Yeah, it is. I mean, I have a lot of fun too, but I appreciate that feedback. That was fun for you. And it was a good time. We talked about a lot of important things. Like if anybody listens to it, it could change the world. Well, maybe not, but I'm over amplifying it. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. But thank you, Sam, and have a great day.